My parents' business went bankrupt. The failure was catastrophic, dragging them into a mountain of debt. Almost overnight, my family plunged from the heights of comfort into the depths of ruin. In our darkest hour, the Vanderbilts, one of New York's old money dynasties, extended a helping hand. They paid off every cent we owed, but their charity came with a price. That price was me. For 3 years, I, Ethan Reed, was to be signed over to the Vanderbilt family as collateral. The patriarch of the family handed my parents a cashier's check for $5 million and said, with icy indifference, "The accounts are settled." In that moment, I wasn't a person. I was a commodity, an asset with a price tag. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms, and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. I swore an oath to myself. I would earn back this money, tear this humiliating contract to shreds, and buy back my own freedom. For those 3 years with the Vanderbilts, my official title was personal attendant to the family heiress, Scarlett Vanderbilt. In reality, it was just a prettier name for a servant. Scarlett was infamous in New York's high society, an unhinged beauty, as gorgeous as a demon and just as unpredictable. Her moods were a volatile storm, shifting from sweet to savage in a heartbeat. She fastened a platinum chain around my neck. The pendant was an exquisite piece of polished obsidian, and on the back, my name, Ethan, was laser engraved. Her fingertips were cold as they brushed against my Adam's apple. "Ethan," she whispered with a faint smile, "remember, from this day forward, you're mine. Wear this. No matter where you run, to the ends of the earth, I'll always be able to find you." I kept my head down, silent, but I knew what this was. It wasn't a token of affection. It was a leash, a mark of shame to remind me that I was her pet, kept in a gilded cage. For 3 years, I endured it all. When she was in a good mood, she'd hook her finger under my chin like I was a cat. When she was in a bad one, she'd hurl a glass of expensive red wine in my face and laugh at the pathetic sight I made. She forbade me from getting close to anyone, especially other women. Once a new maid exchanged a few too many pleasantries with me. The next day, she was fired. Scarlett had locked me away, and everyone in their elite circle gossiped about it. The great Scarlett Vanderbilt had a handsome, obedient lapdog. They had no idea that this lapdog was secretly sharpening his teeth. I used the Vanderbilt's colossal library and their unrestricted high-speed internet to devour everything I could about finance, programming, and investment strategy. By day, I was Scarlett's shadow. But at night, after she'd fallen asleep, I became a ghost on Wall Street. Using the few $1,000s I'd managed to save from my meager allowance, I built a trading algorithm. With that as my weapon, I plunged into the U.S. stock market and the crypto world, moving like a silent, ravenous shark, tearing off pieces of profit where no one was looking. The first year, I made my first $1 million. The second year, my accounts held $5 million. By the end of the third year, the day my contract was up, the total balance across all my accounts was exactly $10 million. Enough to buy back my freedom. The rest was capital for my new life. That night, Scarlett had been at some late-night gala and came home completely drunk. She stumbled into my arms, just as she always did, her hands wrapping around my neck as the smell of gin washed over my face. "Ethan," she murmured, her voice thick, "do you hate me?" I held her steady, my expression a blank mask. "You've had too much to drink, Ms. Vanderbilt. Answer me," she snapped, suddenly shoving me against the wall. Her eyes were hazy but held a wild, obsessive glint. "Do you think I'm insane? Do you spend every single day dreaming of escaping from me?" My heart skipped a beat. I remained silent. My silence seemed to please her. She let out a soft, dazed laugh and leaned in. Her cool lips pressed against my neck, right beside the chain, a ghost of kiss. "You can't escape. Ethan, you can never leave me." With that, the alcohol finally won, and she passed out. I carried her to her room and tucked her into bed. Then, I went back to my own room. A cashier's check for $5 million sat on my nightstand. The price of my soul. On my desk lay the platinum chain I had worn for 3 years. I had finally taken it off. A faint, pale line remained on my skin, the brand of a shackle. I slung a simple backpack over my shoulder. Inside were my laptop and a few changes of clothes. The other $5 million had already been funneled through a dozen channels, disappearing without a trace into anonymous offshore accounts. Standing at the gate of the Vanderbilt estate, I looked back one last time at the magnificent prison that had held me for 3 years. Goodbye, Scarlett. I'm not your dog. I'm Ethan Reed, and now I'm free. I was on a red-eye flight to Austin before dawn. As the plane lifted off the runway, I shut down my phone and tossed the old SIM card. The New York elite all believed Ethan Reed would forever be a dog at Scarlett Vanderbilt's feet. They were all wrong. The news of my departure detonated in the Vanderbilt mansion the next morning. Later, through back channels, I heard scattered reports. When Scarlett woke up to find me gone, with only a check and a necklace left behind, she went completely berserk. She smashed everything in her room, her screams echoing my name through the halls. Her fury was so terrifying that it sent a chill through the entire household staff. They said she stormed into her father's study, her eyes bloodshot, and shrieked, "Find him! I don't care what it costs. You get him back here. I'll make him understand what happens when you betray me." The Vanderbilts were incensed. That a mere piece of collateral would dare to humiliate their precious heiress was an unbearable insult. Scarlett unleashed every resource at her disposal, turning the city upside down and putting $1 million bounty on my head. For a while, the name Ethan Reed became a running joke in Manhattan's high society. The fool who had no idea what he was doing when he provoked the craziest woman in the city. Everyone waited with bated breath to see what gruesome fate awaited me when I was inevitably dragged back. They all thought I could never escape the Vanderbilts' grasp, but they didn't know. The moment I chose to run, I stopped being the prey. I became the hunter, and my targets were the very people who had once crushed me under their heel, the elites who had destroyed my family. This was only the beginning. I settled in Austin, Texas. It was a city of new money, a hub for tech and finance. Unlike the tangled, old-world power of New York, Austin worshipped talent and ambition. It was a paradise for people like me. Under a new identity, I founded a tech investment firm called Ascendant Capital. It was small. The office was in a nondescript high-rise, and including me, we had a staff of 3. First was Chloe Vance, an experienced corporate lawyer and my COO, whom I'd poached with a generous offer. Sharp and efficient, she was my company's shield. The other was Leo Chun, a genius programmer fresh out of college. He had a touch of social anxiety, but was a god when it came to code. He was my company's spear, and I was the one who wielded them both. My first target wasn't the Vanderbilts. They were a towering redwood, their roots running deep. To challenge them now would be a suicide mission. My strategy was to first trim the branches and sever the roots that fed the trunk. My target was a second-tier family that clung to the Vanderbilts for power, the Donovans. 3 years ago, when my family's company was collapsing, the Donovans played a despicable role. They were the Vanderbilts' attack dogs, using underhanded tactics to steal my father's core technology, delivering the fatal blow that shattered us. I would never forget the sight of my father's hair turning gray overnight, or my mother's endless, desperate tears. I had nursed that debt for 3 years. I had Leo use an algorithm model I developed to build an information monitoring system. Its sole purpose was to scrape every digital trace of the Donovan Corporation from the internet. Executive emails, social media, hidden online transaction records. It was a vast network of gray data, and Leo moved through it like a master hacker. In less than a month, a thick report landed on my desk. Marcus Donovan, the CEO, was embezzling company funds, cheating on his wife, and had a secret mistress with an illegitimate child. His son, Tyler Donovan, was a textbook spoiled brat, street racing, drug use, a string of abused women. The list of his transgressions was endless. More importantly, I found irrefutable proof of the Donovan Corporation's fraudulent accounting, along with evidence of how they had used corporate espionage to steal my family's tech 3 years ago. "Ethan, if this gets out, the Donovans are finished," Chloe said, her eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and concern as she read the report. "It's not enough," I said, shaking my head, my gaze like ice. "I don't want them finished. I want them to suffer a fate worse than death. I want to return the pain my father endured 100 times over." My plan was simple. 3 steps. Step 1. Sow chaos. I had Leo anonymously leak photos and videos of Tyler Donovan's drug-fueled orgies to several New York gossip blogs that live for that kind of scandal. The next day, the hashtag Manhattan Santa Donovan's Wild Party was trending on Twitter. Although the Donovans quickly used their connections to kill the story, the seed of scandal had been planted. Their stock price took a hit. Marcus Donovan was left scrambling, thinking it was just his worthless son causing trouble, completely unaware that this was merely the appetizer. Step 2. Pull the rug out from under them. Using my $5 million in capital, I laid an intricate trap in the stock market. I teamed up with a few freelance traders I'd met online, all of whom shared a deep-seated resentment for the old money establishment. We began quietly buying up the Donovan Corporation's floating stock. Then, right when the family released some positive news to stabilize their share price, we dumped everything at once, coordinating the sell-off with an anonymous leak about their fraudulent accounting. We hammered the stock into the ground. The share price plummeted. The Donovan Corporation's shareholders panicked. To save the company, Marcus Donovan started using his personal fortune and the company's cash reserves to buy back shares and prop up the price. Every dollar he threw in, we devoured. In just 1 week, his financial lifeline was stretched to the breaking point. It was then that I got a message, a piece of news from New York about Scarlett. It came from a butler I'd known at the estate, someone I'd been on decent terms with. He contacted me from a burner phone. "Mr. Reed, you have to run. Get as far away as you can." His voice was laced with terror. "Ms. Vanderbilt has lost her mind. She can't find you, so she's taking out on the staff. Yesterday, a maid mentioned you might have gone abroad, and she threw a pot of scalding coffee right in the poor girl's face." I held the phone, saying nothing. She went to her father, too. "She's using the family's international intelligence network to search the whole world for you. She said she'll have you dragged back here if she has to. She said you belong to her, and that even in death, you'll die by her side." After hanging up, I stared out at the city lights of Austin, feeling nothing. Scarlett's descent into madness was entirely predictable. She was a creature of absolute possession and control. My 3 years of perfect obedience had made my presence a given. My sudden absence was, to her, like having her favorite toy stolen. Her rage, her insanity, it was just an owner's fury at a possession that had slipped its leash. It had nothing to do with me. I pulled my focus back to the stock chart flickering on my monitor. The Donovans' final struggles were coming to an end. It was time for step 3, to rip them out, root and stem. I had Chloe, on behalf of Ascendant Capital, formally present a takeover bid to the Donovan Corporation. At the same time, I had Leo send out the complete dossier of their dirty secrets. 1 copy went to the SEC, 1 to the IRS, 1 to Marcus Donovan's wife, and another was sent to every single shareholder and board member of the Donovan Corporation. The information detonated simultaneously. Marcus Donovan's phone blew up. Board members were screaming at him about the financial fraud. His wife was at home, filing for divorce and demanding half his assets. Investigators from the IRS and SEC descended on his office and froze the company's accounts. When a wall starts to crumble, everyone gives it a push. The partners who had been buddy-buddy with the Donovans just days before suddenly terminated their contracts. The banks came calling to collect on their loans. The Donovan Corporation's stock hit rock bottom, then kept falling, limit down, day after day. Within 72 hours, its market value had evaporated by 80%. The acquisition price I offered was insultingly low, but for the trapped shareholders, it was the only lifeboat in sight. At an emergency board meeting, the desperate members forced Marcus Donovan's hand, voting unanimously to accept our offer. I met Marcus Donovan on the day the papers were signed. In just half a month, he looked like he had aged 20 years. His hair was white, his eyes cloudy and vacant. He stared at me blankly until Chloe handed him my business card. When he saw the name Ethan Reed, his pupils contracted violently. "It's you. It was you. The Reed kid," he roared, lunging to his feet like an enraged bull, trying to get at me. My security guard intercepted him. I leaned back in my chair, leisurely picking up my coffee and blowing on the steam. "Mr. Donovan," I said coolly. "Been a while. 3 years ago, you looked at my father with that same expression, didn't you? You bastard. You set me up," he screamed. "Takes one to know one." I replied with a smile that held no warmth. "I'm just returning the favor for what you did to my family. Oh, and by the way, once the acquisition is complete, the company will be restructured. Everyone with the last name Donovan will be purged. That includes your precious son, Tyler. I've already sent the complete evidence of his drug habits to the police. He can spend the rest of his life reflecting in a prison cell." A strangled gasp escaped him, and he clutched his chest. He collapsed, spilling a spray of blood onto the mahogany table. A massive stroke. Watching him being carried away on a stretcher, I felt not a shred of pity, only the cold satisfaction of vengeance. And this was just the interest on the debt. I successfully acquired the Donovan Corporation, restructuring it and absorbing it into Ascendant Capital. My company had grown immensely overnight, and I went from a complete unknown to an emerging player in Austin's business world. I had moved so quickly, so ruthlessly, that by the time New York even registered what was happening, the Donovan family, a longtime vassal of the Vanderbilts, was already history. When the news reached New York, it caused an uproar. No one could believe it. The dog that had escaped the Vanderbilts hadn't been dragged back in disgrace. Instead, he had transformed into a tiger, one capable of devouring the Donovans whole. I could only imagine the look on Scarlett's face when she heard. She would become even more obsessed, more willing to do whatever it took to find me and destroy me. And I would be right here in Austin, waiting for her, because I knew she would come. And when she did, it would be time for me to collect the second payment on my debt. Next target, the Harrisons. Another of the Vanderbilt's lapdogs, another family that had kicked mine when we were down. I was setting a trap across Austin. This time, the fish I intended to catch wasn't just the Harrisons. It was also the frenzied shark that was already tracking the scent of blood, Scarlett Vanderbilt. The reaction from New York was faster than I'd anticipated. The news of the Donovan family's fall was a depth charge that exploded in their tranquil, gilded pool. Everyone was talking about me, Ethan Reed. They were re-evaluating the young man who had been a piece of furniture at the Vanderbilt estate for 3 years. Fear, curiosity, caution. A cocktail of emotions was brewing. Scarlett's reaction, however, was the most surprising of all. She didn't fly into a rage, smash things, or torture the staff as she had before. She locked herself in her room for 3 days and 3 nights. On the 4th day, she emerged. According to the Vanderbilt butler, she was terrifyingly calm. She had changed into a sharp business suit. Her makeup was flawless, and the wild, lost look in her eyes was gone. In its place was a chilling focus and a cold, calculating resolve. Her first act was to take over one of the Vanderbilt family's investment firms. Then, with a hand-picked team of elite analysts, she boarded a private jet to Austin. She had changed her strategy in this hunting game. She was no longer the unhinged monster acting on impulse and emotion. She had become a calm, rational, and far more dangerous predator. I knew she had arrived. The Austin business community was buzzing with the news that the Vanderbilt heiress herself had come to town, apparently planning a major move. The story of Ascendant Capital's rise and our hostile takeover of the Donovans was dug up and passed around. Many could smell a storm on the horizon. Some advised me to cash out and lie low. The power the Vanderbilts wielded in New York was not something a fledgling company could hope to challenge. I didn't back down. I knew Scarlett's visit wasn't just about dragging me back. I had enraged her, but more than that, I had ignited her competitive spirit. She intended to meet me on my own turf in the world of high-stakes finance and utterly crush me. She would destroy Ascendant Capital, leave me with nothing once again, and then drag me back to New York like a dead dog to prove that I could never, ever escape her. Which was exactly what I wanted. Her arrival meant that the Vanderbilt resources, the Vanderbilt capital, had arrived with her. My next target, the Harrisons, were in the renewable energy sector. The family patriarch, Walter Harrison, was a cunning old fox, much harder to deal with than Marcus Donovan. The Harrison Group was a bigger company, and they had no obvious skeletons in their closet. The tactics I'd used on the Donovans wouldn't work here. But I knew the Harrisons had one fatal weakness, a revolutionary battery technology they were developing. To fund the project, they had mortgaged nearly everything the company owned and taken out massive loans from the banks. If they succeeded, they would soar. If they failed, they would be wiped out. And the head of this project was Walter's only son, Kevin Harrison. An arrogant fool, all ambition and no talent. My plan was to strike at the heart of that project. Soon after arriving in Austin, Scarlett turned her attention to the Harrisons. As Vanderbilt allies, it was natural for her to show support. She made a public announcement. Vanderbilt Capital would be investing $1 billion into the Harrison Group to back their new energy project. The news sent the Harrisons' stock soaring. Walter and Kevin Harrison were ecstatic, convinced that with the Vanderbilts behind them, they were invincible. It was a brilliant move on Scarlett's part. She had solidified an alliance and, at the same time, issued a direct challenge to me. She was telling me, "See, the people you're scheming against, I can prop them up with a wave of my hand. You are nothing to me." The Austin business world was ready to watch me fail, certain that Ascendant Capital had finally hit a brick wall. In the face of Scarlett's aggressive play, I did nothing. My company went silent. Everyone thought I was scared, that I had surrendered. Even within my own team, anxiety began to fester. "Ethan, the Vanderbilts are playing for keeps this time," Chloe said, her voice heavy with worry. "Shouldn't we lay low for a while?" I looked out the window at the gleaming skyscraper that housed Vanderbilt Capital's Austin office and shook my head. The more violent the storm, the bigger the catch. "Tell Leo it's time to close the net. Initiate Project Deadless." Project Deadless was a clandestine operation I'd had Leo working on for weeks, a plan to infiltrate the Harrison Group's core technology team. That idiot Kevin Harrison, in his attempt to foster a cutthroat corporate culture, had been relentlessly driving his R&D team, frequently withholding bonuses and taking credit for his engineers' breakthroughs. Morale was at an all-time low. Human ambition is the easiest fortress to breach. We didn't use money. That was crude and left a trail. We used a future. I had Leo anonymously contact several of the most talented but disgruntled senior engineers. He showed them Ascendant Capital's long-term vision for the renewable energy sector and offered them equity and leadership positions they couldn't refuse. At the very moment Scarlett's investment was being celebrated, when Kevin Harrison was basking in the glory of his impending success, those key engineers staged a mass resignation. They walked out with all the core technical data and experimental research vanishing overnight. The next day, they reappeared at Ascendant Capital's newly established Energy Tech Lab. The news hit like a thunderclap, leaving both the Harrisons and Scarlett completely stunned. The Harrison Group's flagship project was instantly paralyzed, a hollow shell without its key personnel and data. Scarlett's $1 billion investment, barely settled in their accounts, had turned into toxic debt. Hearing the news, the banks immediately called in their loans. Business partners demanded to terminate their contracts. The Harrison Group's stock didn't just fall, it imploded, a more spectacular crash than the Donovans had been. Walter Harrison, overwhelmed by the shock, suffered a brain hemorrhage and was rushed to the ICU, his life hanging in the balance. Kevin, the arrogant fool, completely panicked in the face of this sudden catastrophe. He went to the Vanderbilt Capitol building and knelt on the sidewalk, begging to see Scarlett, pleading for another bailout. Scarlett didn't even let him in the door. In the ruthless world of high finance, a useless asset isn't worth a second glance. Once again, just as the Harrison Group was at its weakest, I issued a takeover bid. The price was, again, humiliatingly low. But facing bankruptcy and liquidation, the Harrison shareholders had no other choice. A week later, the Harrison Group also became a part of Ascendant Capital. I sat in Walter Harrison's old chairman's office, looking out at the sprawling Austin skyline, my heart calm. Destroying the Donovans had been about catharsis. But acquiring the Harrisons was a strategic move. I now possessed their years of cutting-edge energy research, a team of top-tier engineers, and had officially announced Ascendant Capital's entry into the renewable energy market. My business empire was expanding at a speed that left everyone breathless. This time, New York was silent. No one dared call me a clueless dog anymore. They started using words like tycoon and viper to describe me. I knew Scarlett must have been apoplectic. I had not only cost her $1 billion, but, more importantly, I had publicly and brutally slapped her across the face in front of the entire Austin business community. I had turned her grand entrance into a humiliating farce. Given her personality, she would never let it go. Sure enough, that night, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered. The line was dead silent, but I could hear it, the sound of suppressed, seething rage in someone's breathing. It was Scarlett. Neither of us spoke, locked in a silent battle of wills. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice hoarse and cold as ice. "Ethan Reed, you got a lot of nerve." "You're too kind," I replied flatly. "You think you've won?" Her tone was laced with mockery. "You think using these pathetic back-alley tricks to destroy two worthless families that cling to us makes you my equal? Worthless or not, you know the truth. How does that billion-dollar investment feel right about now?" I twisted the knife without hesitation. Her breathing hitched on the other end. "Ethan, you've truly pissed me off now," she said, her words slow and deliberate, dripping with menace. "I will make you regret everything you've done today. I'm going to build you up so high you can touch the sky, and then I'm going to watch you fall, watch you shatter into a million pieces. I will make you kneel before me and beg for my mercy." "I'll be waiting," I said, and hung up. The war had officially begun. The dynamic between us was no longer about an escapee and a pursuer. It was a duel between two hunters, and we both wanted the other one dead. I knew she would now bring the full weight of the Vanderbilt family against me. No more games. This would be a full-scale assault. Ascendant Capital was about to face the greatest test of its existence. But I felt no fear. Instead, a strange thrill coursed through me. "Scarlett, you kept me like a canary in a cage for 3 years, never realizing I'd become an eagle, desperate to soar. The harder you try to break my wings, the higher I will fly, until one day, you too will know the taste of falling from the heavens." The day after our call, Scarlett's revenge came, and it was overwhelming. The Vanderbilt family, when truly mobilized, was a terrifying force of nature. First came the media assault. The internet was suddenly flooded with stories painting me as a villain. I was an ungrateful traitor who had bitten the hand that fed me. I was a corporate pirate who used hackers to steal trade secrets. They even spun a narrative of me as a pretty boy who had sold his body to climb the social ladder. Vicious rumors, backed by cleverly doctored evidence, went viral overnight. Ascendant Capital's reputation took a massive hit. Next came the commercial blockade. Every partnership we were negotiating was unilaterally terminated. Banks began reevaluating our credit risk and tightening our lines of credit. Our raw material suppliers collectively breached their contracts, choosing to pay the penalty fees rather than continue doing business with us. Ascendant Capital had become an island, completely isolated. Chloe's phone was ringing off the hook as she dealt with a constant barrage of legal threats and contract disputes. Leo's tech team was under immense pressure. The new product we had planned after the Heiress acquisition was stalled due to the supply chain collapse. Panic began to spread through the company. Some employees started quietly looking for other jobs. Scarlett's strategy was to boil a frog in water. She was going to slowly suffocate me, forcing me to watch the empire I had built crumble piece by piece, powerless to stop it. It was a far more psychologically devastating tactic than a direct attack. "Ethan, we can't hold on much longer," Chloe told me, her eyes bloodshot with exhaustion. "Our cash flow will dry up in a month at best. If we don't find a way out, we'll have to declare bankruptcy." I stood at my office window, looking out at the city, silent. Scarlett's methods were undeniably brutal. She had targeted my company's greatest weakness, its shallow roots. Ascendant Capital had grown fast, but it was like a tree with sprawling branches and a weak foundation, unable to withstand a hurricane. But would I surrender so easily? The humiliation and patience of the past 3 years were not for nothing. I wouldn't be beaten back into submission just as I was tasting victory. I was waiting for an opportunity. A single, fatal blow that could turn the tables completely. And that opportunity required a key person. Someone I thought I would never contact again. I dialed a number that had been buried in my contacts for years. It rang for a long time before someone answered, a weary, gravelly voice on the other end. "Hello, who is this?" "Arthur, it's me, Ethan Reed." There was a full 30 seconds of stunned silence, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "Ethan? My God, kid, you're alive." Arthur Chun. He had been my father's best friend and the vice president of his company. He was a brilliant, honorable businessman. 3 years ago, when our family was ruined, Arthur had spent nearly his entire life savings trying to help us, but it wasn't enough. Heartbroken and disillusioned, he had left New York and retired to his hometown. "Arthur, I need your help," I said, getting straight to the point. I gave him the condensed version of the last 3 years, including my current predicament. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Ethan, you've grown up," he finally said, his voice a mix of pride and worry. "But the Vanderbilts, they're not a force we can afford to provoke." "Arthur, I'm not provoking them. I'm taking my revenge," I said, my voice firm. "Everything we lost, I'm going to take it back with my own 2 hands. I need you. I need your experience and your network. The old team, the ones who worked with you and my dad, can you still reach them?" Another silence stretched between us. I could feel his internal struggle. A quiet retirement on one side, a life-or-death gamble against a titan on the other. "Ethan," he said at last, his voice suddenly resonating with unshakable resolve. "You are your father's greatest pride. If he knew what you were doing today, he could rest in peace. Wait for me. In 3 days, I'm coming to Austin, and I'm bringing the old crew with me." A warmth spread through my chest as I hung up the phone. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. 3 days later, Arthur arrived. He didn't come alone. He brought with him 7 of the core executives from my father's old company. Experts in technology, production, sales, and management. All of them top-tier talent in their fields. The collapse 3 years ago had left them sidelined and frustrated. Now I was giving them a chance to get back in the fight. As they stood before me, their hair streaked with gray, but their eyes still sharp as ever, I felt like I was seeing a glimpse of my father's legacy. "Ethan," Arthur said, his tone formal and serious. "From this day on, the lives of us old-timers are in your hands." I bowed deeply. "Gentlemen, welcome home." With this team of seasoned veterans on board, the decline of Ascendant Capital was immediately halted. Arthur used his decades-old network to painstakingly reopen our supply chains. It was a struggle, but it gave us the breathing room we desperately needed. Meanwhile, I, along with Leo and the new tech team, began to execute the most insane and critical phase of my plan. Scarlett wanted to blockade me, so I would shatter the blockade. She wanted to destroy my foundation, so I would grow a forest so dense that no one could ever tear it down. I took every last dollar I had, along with all the emergency funds I could raise, and poured it all into the final development and production line for our new battery technology. It was a monumental gamble. I was betting my future and everyone else's on a single hand. If I lost, I would be utterly and irrevocably destroyed. But if I won, I would usher in a new era, my era. Scarlett, with her sharp instincts, sensed my intentions. She intensified the pressure, doing everything in her power to crush me before I could succeed. That period was the darkest and most thrilling of my life. Every day felt like walking a tightrope over a bottomless abyss. Vanderbilt's corporate spies tried to steal our tech secrets. Leo fed them fake data, leading them on a wild goose chase before we counterhacked and crippled half their company's network with a virus. They sent headhunters to poach our talent, offering exorbitant salaries to lure away Arthur's old team. But Arthur and his crew played along, extracting key details of the Vanderbilt's next business moves in the process. We were like an army fighting from the trenches, muddy and battered, but stubbornly alive. And our new product, the revolutionary solid-state battery, after countless failures and sleepless nights, was finally perfected in the lab. The moment the final test data came through, the entire lab erupted in cheers. I knew it was time. The horn for the counterattack was about to sound. Scarlett, your doomsday has arrived. We didn't immediately announce our breakthrough with a new solid-state battery. I was waiting for the perfect moment, a moment when I could catch Scarlett and the entire Vanderbilt empire completely off guard and deliver a single killing blow. Seeing that her prolonged blockade and pressure campaign hadn't broken me, Scarlett was growing impatient. She started resorting to more aggressive, even illegal, tactics. She thought I was on my last legs, still flailing. She had no idea I had already sharpened my blade to a razor's edge. I had Chloe organize a grand product launch, inviting every major tech media outlet and investment firm from around the world. Naturally, an invitation was sent to Scarlett Vanderbilt. I imagine she must have laughed when she saw it. A company on the verge of bankruptcy, hosting a product launch? It had to be a joke, a final, desperate gasp. She came. She wanted to witness my final struggle firsthand, to see me become a laughingstock. On the day of the launch, she wore a striking, fire-red dress and sat in the center of the front row. Her makeup was immaculate, her presence overwhelming. She looked like a queen, ready to watch a gladiator's final, pathetic screams. Her eyes met mine, filled with contempt and the smugness of a victor. I walked onto the stage. I didn't look at her. My gaze swept across the entire auditorium. I know many of you came here today to see Ascendant Capital fail. I began, my calm voice sending a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. A derisive smile touched Scarlett's lips. But I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. I continued, my tone shifting. Because today, you're going to witness the beginning of a new era. I didn't waste time with rhetoric. I had the team play a stunning video presentation showcasing the performance of our Prometheus solid-state battery. Energy density, 3 times that of traditional lithium-ion batteries. Charging speed, 5 times faster. A 10-minute charge for a 500-mile range. And most importantly, it was completely safe. In the video, our battery was punctured, set on fire, and crushed by heavy machinery. It remained intact. No fire, no explosion. As these revolutionary stats and images filled the giant screen, the entire venue fell into a stunned, dead silence. No one could speak. They all understood the implications. This wasn't just a new product. It was an energy revolution. Whoever controlled this technology controlled the future. The smile on Scarlett's face froze. The contempt in her eyes was replaced by sheer, unadulterated shock. She stared at the screen as if trying to burn a hole through it. She couldn't believe it. This was impossible. How could a small company she had pushed to the brink of extinction produce something so world-changing? That's impossible. You're faking it. A voice shouted from the audience. It was Kevin Harrison. He had somehow gotten in and was pointing at me like a madman. He's a fraud. The data is all fake. Before I could respond, a few tech journalists in the audience started raising their hands with skeptical questions. I smiled. We don't believe in defining our products with a PowerPoint presentation, I said into the microphone. Seeing is believing. I snapped my fingers. Staff members wheeled a custom-built testing platform onto the stage. We invited some of the most respected industry experts in the audience to come up and conduct the test themselves. Puncture, fire, short circuit. Right there, in front of all the cameras and investors, the Prometheus battery passed every single brutal, extreme test flawlessly. The room exploded. Camera flashes went off like a strobe light. Reporters rushed the stage. The investors' eyes gleamed with a predatory light. This wasn't just a product anymore. It was a golden goose. No, it was an inexhaustible gold mine. I knew I had won. My eyes found Scarlett in the front row. Her face was ashen, completely drained of color. The arrogance and disdain were gone, replaced by a hollow, lost look and something I had never seen in her before. Fear. She had lost. utterly and completely. She had used the immense power of the Vanderbilt family to weave an inescapable net around me, only to personally force me into a corner when my only option was to go all in and produce a trump card powerful enough to shatter the foundations of her entire dynasty. The irony was crushing. After the launch, our office was besieged. Orders poured in from across the globe. Investment firms were practically lining up, waving blank checks, begging us to take their money. The same suppliers who had abandoned us came crawling back, pleading for a new contract. Ascendant Capital's valuation multiplied 100-fold in a single day. Meanwhile, the stock of Vanderbilt-affiliated companies, especially those in the energy sector, plummeted. I, Ethan Reed, was no longer a pawn to be toyed with. I was a new king on the chessboard. No, I was now powerful enough to flip the entire board over. However, I had still underestimated Scarlett's madness. Just when I thought she would retreat after this devastating loss, an unexpected visitor found me, and the news he brought completely upended my understanding of the past 3 years. It was late at night when a knock came at my office door. The man who entered made my pupil's contract. It was Scarlett's brother, Julian Vanderbilt, the true heir to the Vanderbilt fortune, a man even more calculating and ruthless than his sister. "Mr. Reed, a pleasure to finally meet you," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, extending a hand. I ignored it, my gaze cold. What does the great Julian Vanderbilt want with me at this hour? "I'm here to discuss a business proposition," he said, retracting his hand without a hint of awkwardness and seating himself on my sofa. "I'm very interested in Ascendant Capital's technology. Name your price. The Vanderbilt family will buy the entire company." His tone wasn't one of negotiation. It was one of charity, as if buying my life's work was a favor he was granting me. "Your money is tainted." "I'm not interested," I shot back. Julian's expression darkened. "Reed, don't push your luck. Do you really think your little stunt has shaken the foundations of my family? My sister may have time for these petty games, but I don't." He paused, then pulled a photograph from his pocket and tossed it onto my desk. It was a picture of my parents. They were taking a walk in their quiet, modest neighborhood, smiling. My blood ran cold. "I know you've hidden them away somewhere safe," Julian said, his voice a velvet threat. "But as long as they're on this continent, there's nowhere my family can't find them. You're a smart man. You know what you have to do. Is your ridiculous pride worth more than your parents' safety?" My fists clenched, knuckles turning white. The thing I had feared most had finally happened. They were using my parents to threaten me. Despicable, I hissed through my teeth. "It's called leverage," Julian sneered, his smile demonic. "You have 3 days to think it over. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that a truck won't lose control the next time your parents go out for a walk." He stood, straightened his suit jacket, and walked out of my office. I stared at the photograph on the desk as a tidal wave of fury and murderous rage threatened to consume me. The Vanderbilts. Julian Vanderbilt. I had thought my only adversary was Scarlett. Now I understood. The one who truly wanted me dead, the one who wanted to destroy everything I had, was the vast, dark entity behind her, her family. Just as I was sinking into despair, convinced there was no way out, my phone buzzed. A secure, unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end was both achingly familiar and utterly unexpected. It was Scarlett. But this time, her voice held none of its usual arrogance or fury. It was filled with an exhaustion and a desperation I had never heard before. "Ethan, run. What did you say?" I thought I had misheard. "My brother came to see you, didn't he? He threatened you with your parents, right?" Scarlett's voice was rushed and trembling, thick with fear. "Ethan, listen to me. You can't win against him. He's a psychopath. He'll do anything. You have to leave, take your parents, get out of the country, and never come back." I was stunned. Was this the same Scarlett who had tortured me, whose possessiveness was a suffocating poison? Her words now, they sounded like she was worried about me. How was that possible? "Scarlett, what new game are you playing?" My voice was ice, laced with suspicion. "I'm not playing any games. Ethan, just trust me this one time, please," she almost screamed into the phone, her voice breaking. "Why do you think I brought you to the Vanderbilt estate? Why do you think I kept you by my side for 3 years? My heart hammered against my ribs. A wild, impossible thought flashed through my mind. "What are you talking about?" There was a moment of silence, then the sound of choked sob. 3 years ago, your family's bankruptcy wasn't an accident. It was my brother. Julian orchestrated the whole thing. He wanted your father's technology, and he wanted your talent. With people like him, if he can't have something, he destroys it. His original plan was to ruin you completely, and then, once you had nothing left, to have you erased from existence. My mind went blank. A deafening roar filled my ears. I had always believed my family was destroyed by the opportunistic attacks of the Donovans and the Harrisons. I had never imagined that the puppet master pulling the strings was Julian Vanderbilt himself. It was me. I begged my father to buy you. Scarlett's voice was filled with anguish. I know what my brother is capable of. The only way to keep you safe was to keep you by my side, inside the Vanderbilt estate, under the watchful eyes of all of New York society. As insane as he is, he would never dare to touch someone who was publicly known as mine. My chest tightened, a painful, constricting grip around my heart. I thought back on those 3 years. Her volatility, her cruelty, her possessiveness, her refusal to let me speak to anyone. Could it be that it wasn't imprisonment? That it was a twisted form of protection? The necklace. I asked, my voice dry. It wasn't a leash, she retorted fiercely. It had a GPS tracker and a panic button, and it contained a micro drive with a backup of all the original evidence of how my brother framed your family. I thought if the day ever came when I couldn't protect you, you could use it to go to the police or as a bargaining chip. But you threw it away. You just threw it away and ran. By the end, her voice was a cry of despair and betrayal. My world tilted on its axis. So that was it. That was the truth. The symbol of my shame was actually my lifeline. The gilded cage was my fortress. The woman I had hated and plotted against for 3 years had been protecting me all along, in her own clumsy, obsessive way. And what had I done? I hadn't just escaped. I had launched a war of revenge against her and her family. I had destroyed 2 of her allies, cost her $1 billion, and publicly humiliated her. No wonder she had seemed so insane. Her madness wasn't about losing a beloved pet. It was the terror of seeing the person she had fought to protect abandon his sanctuary and walk right into the sights of the monster who wanted him dead. Her rage, her hunt for me, it was all a desperate attempt to drag me back to safety. And I had mistaken it all for humiliation and provocation. An overwhelming wave of guilt and a storm of complex emotions crashed over me. Ethan, listen. Scarlett's voice pulled me back from my chaotic thoughts. Her tone was now eerily calm, infused with a chilling finality. I've sent another backup of the evidence to your encrypted email. My brother's crimes go far beyond what he did to your family. Money laundering, market manipulation, even a few homicides. It's enough to put him away for good. And what about you? I asked instinctively. A sad, hollow laugh echoed through the phone. Me? I'm a Vanderbilt. If I turn him in, I'm betraying my entire family. My father will never forgive me. There will be no place for me. Ethan, take the evidence and run. Go as far as you can. This is the last thing I can do for you. Live well. She hung up. I stood frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. Scenes from the last 3 years flashed through my mind. Her throwing wine on me because I spoke to another woman, a warning to keep others away. Her locking me in the mansion because Julian spies were watching outside. Her fastening the collar around my neck and checking it every day because it was the only thing that could save my life. This impossible, unhinged heiress, the woman I had despised for 3 years. Everything she had done was born from a desperate, profound, and twisted act of protection. And now, to ensure my survival, she had chosen to sacrifice herself and turn against her own family. I looked at the threatening photo on my desk, then at the newly arrived encrypted file in my inbox, titled Annihilation. Run? How could I possibly run? If I left now, what kind of man would I be? To let a woman, the woman who had risked everything to protect me, face a family of cannibalistic monsters alone. I couldn't do it. Julian Vanderbilt, you want to play? Fine, I'll play. I'm not just going to destroy you. I'm going to burn the entire house of Vanderbilt to the ground. And I'm going to make sure Scarlett Vanderbilt walks away from the ashes, safe and sound. This was a debt I, Ethan Reed, owed her. I didn't run. I didn't even move my parents. I knew that against a man like Julian, running was the most foolish choice. He could find anyone, anywhere. Instead of living as a fugitive, it was better to strike first and eliminate the threat for good. I opened the file Scarlett had sent. The contents were even more horrifying than I had imagined. Julian had used the Vanderbilt family's power to build a massive shadow empire. Smuggling, money laundering, stock manipulation, illegal acquisitions. Any one of these crimes was enough to send him to prison for life. The most chilling discovery was an investigation file on an accidental car crash from several years ago. The victim was a Vanderbilt Group vice president and Julian's main rival for the position of heir. All the evidence pointed directly to Julian. This man wasn't just a criminal. He was a demon who would murder his own kin for power. I carefully sorted the data, separating the financial crimes from the evidence for the capital offenses. I didn't go to the police. The Vanderbilts were powerful enough to suppress the evidence if I didn't strike a fatal blow on the first try. That would only tip him off, and I'd lose my chance forever. My plan was to first cut off his claws, then sever his limbs, and only then go for the heart. I called Arthur and Chloe and told them everything. Arthur slammed his fist on the table. That bastard. Ethan, just say the word. Us old men will go to war with you. Chloe was more analytical. Julian's power base is in New York. It will be difficult to take him down from Austin. We need an ally, a power strong enough to rival the Vanderbilts, and one who already has a grudge against Julian. Does such a person exist? I asked. Yes, Chloe said, a spark in her eye. In New York, the Ashford family. The Ashfords, like the Vanderbilts, were one of New York's ruling families. For decades, the two dynasties have been bitter rivals. The current patriarch, Old Man Ashford, had been fighting Scarlett's father, Augustus Vanderbilt, his entire life. But the crucial piece was this. The mother of the vice president who died in that car crash was an Ashford. She had been the old man's most beloved sister. The Ashfords have always suspected Julian was behind the crash, but never had proof. If we give this evidence to them. Chloe left the sentence hanging, but the implication was clear. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I immediately had Chloe make discreet contact with the Ashfords. Meanwhile, using the 3 days Julian had given me and the financial evidence I possessed, I began to set my trap. I had Leo unleash his Skynet system once more. This time, the targets were the Vanderbilt Group and every associated company in Julian's shadow empire. With the internal data Scarlett provided as a key, Leo's infiltration was effortless. We tracked capital flows, uncovered secret accounts, and located hidden assets. We exposed everything that had been lurking in the dark. We began to quietly short the stock of the Vanderbilt Group and every public company connected to Julian. It was a net of unprecedented scale. 3 days later, Julian's call came right on schedule. Mr. Reed, have you made your decision? His voice oozed with smug confidence. The company is yours, I said calmly. A light chuckle came through the phone. A wise choice. I enjoy doing business with smart people. Be at my office tomorrow morning with the equity transfer agreements. Done, I said, my voice crisp. After hanging up, a cold smile spread across my face. Julian, your arrogance will be your downfall. You think you have me cornered, but you're the one walking into a grave I've dug just for you. The next day, I arrived at the Vanderbilt Capital office in Austin as scheduled. Julian's legal team was already there, looking triumphant. Did you bring it? He asked, leaning back in his executive chair, looking down on me. I nodded and placed a flash drive on his desk. Everything you want is on here. He motioned for a lawyer to check it. The lawyer plugged the drive into a laptop, opened the files, and his face instantly went pale. Mr. Vanderbilt, the lawyer stammered. Julian walked over impatiently. When he saw the screen, his eyes widened in horror. It wasn't an equity transfer agreement. It was a complete compilation of all his crimes, including secret audio recordings of conversations between him and his father. Ethan, you dare to cross me. Julian's face twisted into a mask of pure rage. I dare to do more than that. I'm sending you to hell, I said, looking him dead in the eye. As you're watching this, the Ashfords are likely paying your father a visit, with the evidence of your little murder case in hand. I glanced at my watch. Also, the market opens in 10 minutes. When all of your accomplishments go public, what do you think will happen to your family stock price? The blood drained from Julian's face. He finally understood. He wasn't a hunter. He was the prey, caught in a trap. He lunged at me, but my security guard stepped in his way. Ethan, I'll kill you. I'll kill your whole family, he shrieked hysterically. I ignored him and walked out. As I stepped out of the Vanderbilt building, the clock struck 9:30 a.m. The stock market opened. The share price of the Vanderbilt Group and dozens of affiliated companies instantly collapsed. They opened at their limit down, a complete and total freefall. Our funds, the Ashford's funds, and all the other players we'd coordinated with struck at the same moment. A tsunami of sell orders flooded the market, wiping out everything. Simultaneously, the evidence of Julian's crimes was leaked online. Money laundering, smuggling, market manipulation, fraud, murder. Each charge was a bombshell that rocked the nation. New York was shaken to its core. The House of Vanderbilt, a titan that had stood for generations, came crashing down in a single day. The collapse was an avalanche. With irrefutable proof of murder, the Ashfords took the case to the highest levels of government. The other elite families, seeing the great ships sinking, swarmed in to pick at the carcass and claim their share of the spoils. Everyone abandons a falling wall. Augustus Vanderbilt tried to save what was left of his empire by throwing his son under the bus, staging a pathetic play of a father disowning his criminal son. But it was useless. The evidence we had was too comprehensive. He couldn't distance himself. In the end, Julian Vanderbilt was sentenced to death and executed immediately. Augustus was implicated and received a life sentence. The Vanderbilt group was seized, broken up, and ultimately absorbed by the Ashfords and a consortium of other firms. A once mighty dynasty had vanished in less than a month. The Donovans, the Harrisons, the Vanderbilts. Every enemy who had wronged me and my family had paid the price. My revenge was complete. I stood in the tallest skyscraper in Austin, looking down at the city that had given me a new life. But I didn't feel the elation I had expected, only a profound sense of peace. After the dust settled, Arthur and the old team began integrating our new assets. Ascendant Capital was rebranded as New Dawn Holdings, and a new business empire began to rise. My parents moved to Austin. When they looked at me, their tears were a mixture of pain and pride. Everything seemed to be resolved, but there was one person I couldn't let go of. Scarlett. She had disappeared after that fateful phone call. I used every resource at my disposal to find her, but she had vanished without a trace. I even asked the Ashfords. They had no idea where she was. After the fall of the Vanderbilts, her remaining relatives despised her, calling her a traitor who had destroyed her own family. They all wanted her dead. I grew more and more afraid. I was terrified she might do something reckless. A month later, Chloe handed me a letter. It was delivered by a man who claimed to be Ms. Vanderbilt's former driver. He said it had to be given directly to you. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. It was Scarlett's handwriting, bold and sharp, just like her. The letter was brief. Ethan, by the time you read this, I'll be on a small island, very far away. There's sun, sand, and ocean waves here. There is no New York elite, no Vanderbilt family, and no you. Don't look for me. This is the first and last time I will ever ask you for anything. I used to think locking you by my side was the best way to protect you. Now I understand. You were never a canary. You are an eagle. You deserve your own sky. What happened in the past, right or wrong, it's over. You don't need to feel guilty. From the moment I decided to protect you, it was my choice. I stole you away from that monster, my brother, and I kept you for 3 years. I watched you grow stronger, and I watched you finally fly out of my cage to soar in the heavens. That is probably the proudest accomplishment of my life. The Vanderbilts owed you a debt, and you have collected it. I owed you your freedom, and now I have given it back. We're even now. From now on, the sky is vast. We go our separate ways. Live well. Don't think of me. Scarlett. Tears blur my vision as I finish the letter. That foolish woman. Even? How could we possibly be even? She had destroyed her own family and sacrificed everything she had ever known to give me a new life and my freedom. I, Ethan Reed, would be in her debt for the rest of my life. I carefully folded the letter and placed it in my jacket, close to my heart. I looked up at the blue sky outside my window. After a long moment, I spoke. Chloe, mobilize every resource the company has. Spare no expense. Find that island. 3 years later, the Aegean Sea, an unnamed island. A woman in a flowing white dress was running barefoot along the shore, chasing the waves. Her smile was as brilliant as the sun, completely free of the old volatility and darkness. She turned and saw me standing a short distance away. She froze. I watched her, my heart full. Across oceans and continents, we had finally found each other again. I told you not to look for me, didn't I? She said, her voice carrying a faint, almost imperceptible tremor. I walked toward her until I was standing right in front of her. I took a small velvet box from my pocket. Inside was a necklace, identical to the one she had given me. But this time, the obsidian pendant was engraved with a single word, Horizon. I gently fastened it around her neck. Scarlett Vanderbilt, you pulled me out of hell and kept me in your cage for 3 years. Now it's my turn. I leaned in and whispered in her ear, from now on, I will be the guardian of your sky, and I will be the one to sit in your cage. She looked at me, her gaze searching mine for a long, long time. And then the tears came, a dam breaking as she collapsed into my arms. She slammed into my chest, sobbing like a child, letting out all the pain, fear, and longing of the past few years. I held her tightly, letting her tears soak my shirt. Out on the water, the sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the sea and sky in hues of warm, brilliant gold. This time, it wasn't imprisonment. It was redemption, for me and for her. Those who had betrayed me were ashes, and the one who had saved me, I would spend a lifetime repaying. This, for Ethan Reed, was the only ending that mattered.